From the Spacebird Media Studios, it's Roxanne and Ace Unlimited.
Welcome to Roxanne and Ace Unlimited. That would be us, Roxanne and Ace, and we feel unlimited. It's the holiday season. Advent is going. Christmas is coming. The goose is getting fat. But hopefully Thanksgiving was good for you as well. We are so excited to be a part of what is happening in the midst of the trends and the vibes of the week. Thanks to My Brother's Cup and Birmingham Mortgage Group for making that happen. Roxanne, as always, how's it going?
Absolutely great. I have to ask you if you're glicked. Yes, that's the term.
I don't like to talk about my personal problems because I probably am all the time.
This summer, it was Barbie and Oppenheimer, which became Barbenheimer.
Right.
Now it's glicked, a combination of Wicked and Gladiator.
Okay.
In order to be glicked, you have to have seen two. I've seen one and you've seen one, so I think together we're glicked.
Together we are glicked, yes. We saw Wicked the day before Thanksgiving, and it was amazing. I mean, we're a musical family, so theater is the heartbeat of our house. But I had fallen in love with Wicked years ago, saw the Broadway show in Boston, and raised my daughters on it. So yeah, so Wicked was at the top of our list. We'll probably see it again before I even see Gladiator. So I don't know that I myself officially will be glicked, but I do want to see it mainly because Pedro Pascal is in it, and anything he's in, I'm in. So that's he's just okay, or just the movie's okay. Not a great one.
I wanted to love it. Gladiator's one of my favorite movies of all time. Just in top 10.
Cameron Crowe, yeah.
The lead actor has no personality. He's dead. He's talking, but he's dead. He's an understated Irish actor. Wrong choice for the lead. You want Russell Crowe so bad that you want to call him back from the dead. And then everybody loves Denzel, but Denzel's being Denzel in a Roman atmosphere. And he's cool, but he's like it's like watching him in any other. It's
like the Equalizer, but he's gone back in time. Yeah.
But he's in Rome, and it doesn't work. And
that's amazing.
I'm sorry, the Sharks in the Coliseum. I've been to the Coliseum.
Yeah.
That's such a stretch, and I'm not one of these people. Well, that wouldn't have happened. You know, because I can be cool.
Sure.
That was a little hokey. The CGI look. The fighting monkeys look fake.
Well, and the thing, though, that I will say, Oppenheimer and Barbie were two awesome movies within themselves. So it made sense. Both. Yeah, so it made sense that those became like kind of interlocked of, we own the summer, right? But, yeah, you can't really put Wicked and Gladiator in the same category, especially based on your review. I would say that it fails in comparison because the thing is, so much of Wicked, because it was part one, so much of it that you have to imagine when you're watching the stage production, they're able to make come to life, right? And so you're just mesmerized. I think the next time we go will probably be like IMAX because I want to experience that overload of just all the colors and all the vibes of the sound and everything. So, but yeah, so I guess if nothing else, you saved me $12.50.
Yeah, I read the reviews, vehemently disagree with me, but there you go. Right. You and I tend to agree totally on movies. So, there you have it. Now, on Hot Santa.
Didn't know that was a thing.
Okay, it's Google right now, Hot Santa. Right. Target has really, in the past, messed up royally, not knowing, along with Bud Light, who they're appealing to, who their customer is. Well, this season, you've got Chris K, a Target associate, that's supposed to be Kris Kringle, who is strangely kind of like a hot Santa.
Oh, I see him.
Got him. Yeah, he's got a beard, which normally isn't my thing.
Yeah.
His voice there's something about him, and women are stopping in Target with their cart and going, is that a hot Santa? And it's blown up. TikTok's gone bananas. People want some hot Santa. Now it's weird. This season there are movies making Santa hot. I mean, what's up with that? But here's the thought.
Mm-hmm.
Folks our age, and I don't think I'm that old, we're up with Home Alone and characters that they love to watch in Christmas movies.
Right.
And they want a character to grasp, is the thought. And Target knows it's women shopping at Target. And it's cute, it's funny. And so watch out.
Well, and I will say probably my favorite depiction of Santa as cool Santa was the John Travolta Capital One commercial, I think from last year, and they're repurposing again this year because it's, him from Saturday Night Fever, and then he's just Santa in all of his swagger and, mojo. But I will say the holiday commercial that's already gotten me twice is the Apple AirPods. Have you seen this one?
Oh, yes.
Oh, so anyone who hasn't seen it, please go watch it. But the gist of it is it tugs at all the daddy heartstrings. When he puts in his AirPods and he, is hard of hearing and he can then hear his daughter's voice and all the, I love you, daddy, and all that stuff. I'm like, I'm not crying, you're crying. I was like, man, between that and like the Rice Krispie commercial from like 7 years ago, like, I was like, what is happening? So brilliant marketing. Don't get me wrong. Like if nothing else, I would buy them on the fact that you tugged at my heartstrings. So if you can tug on the hot string for, whatever that is, then do your thing.
So there's something shocking going on in today's church. What is it? For the very first time, young men, outnumbering young women in church. Pew Research is all over this. They looked at one church in particular, Grace Church in Waco, Texas, which has sort of a Baptist feel.
Yeah.
And it's full of young guys. I think it's neat because research shows when the father or the male of the family is leading their family toward church, it's a really high success rate in terms of their family getting saved and following Jesus and following in love with him. But I just remember the years as a believer married to an unbeliever being in church thinking, I'm alone and there are all these other women and we're all alone. Wouldn't it be nice to be there with somebody who loves Jesus? That's happened now.
Sure.
But it's just, and if you look at the number of young men, it's exciting to me. And I want to get your thoughts on it. What do you think this resurgence may be about?
Well, I love it from the perspective because especially as a guy who grew up in church and there were more girls than guys, which was actually kind of why I was there, truth be told. But in that, I love this pendulum shift because I was actually at a radio conference not too long ago, and we were talking about the fact of how do we get young Christian men or even young men into the church or, excited about their faith. And it all came down to the fact that they don't want, and this was the same way of when I was a kid, I didn't want my faith to look like that of my parents. And I think with every generation, that always is true. So it's a matter of now with technology being what it is, and people can kind of sample churches before they go to them. You can even, a lot of times you can fall in love with the preacher or the worship team through TikTok or whatever, and then you go, man, I'm going to go check out that church, But the one thing that I will say, and again, I have no proof of this, but just in having young adults as daughters and then meeting their boyfriends and then that circle, is that it's about creating a legacy of their own. Because on one half of the coin, you got those who didn't grow up in the church, so they want to break off and create that family tree that is rooted in faith. And then you got the other side that was raised in the church, but didn't necessarily have a loving home. And so they want to be able to combine the two to say, what I learned is that what you do and say on Sundays needs to also go into your kitchens and your bedrooms and your living rooms as a family. And so the young men that I've encountered through those conversations has said that. So this doesn't surprise me because, again, and I will say this, if you haven't lit that fire yet in your heart, is that you don't have to be determined based on what you did or did not have faith-wise as a kid. Create that for yourself. Surprise people. Go, wow, how did you, get here with God based on what I, watched you as a kid. Well, I made the choice to have my own relationship with God so that it had its own thumbprint, and then that is what I am passing on to my family.
I love that. That's so powerful. Good assessment. And again, it's so encouraging. All right, a life coach of 25 years is discussing habits that lead to divorce. A lack of communication. You and I have discussed that thoroughly many times, but here's the other one. Nagging. Making a suggestion on how your spouse could do better. Giving advice on how your spouse needs to change. Or just downright getting irritated and nagging. When are you going to do this? Why am I talking like, when are you going to do that?
I mean, the nagging voice.
Just the sound of it.
Yeah.
And what does it do? Oh, it's an awful E word. It erodes.
Yeah. Well, and it's amazing to me, too, in situations of the relationships I've been in or moments, even in good relationships, where you can say something and in the heart of the person, I think sometimes they don't mean it to come out the way that it comes out. But when it does, it's perceived because it may be a trigger for the other person. And they're like, oh, well, my mom used to say that, or my ex used to say that, or, whatever it is. So you have to be careful not to perceive the words. But if you know that you're saying it in a nagging way, or that you're constantly being told, well, you just nag me all the time. I don't want to do any of the things you want me to do because you're just nagging me. Then maybe that is a gut check. Especially from the person who, you're supposed to be in love with and for happily ever after. There is no happy, it's just ever after. It's the constant.
Or know what they can't stand. It's like Wayne does not like to have anything to do with Christmas lights at all, ever. Well, I hung most of them up on the house myself, which I'll say is quite the feat.
Sure.
And they look gorgeous, but I had one little section. And I did try it. I just walked into his office and said, honey, I know you don't like Christmas lights, and I would not irritate you unless it was the last thing, unless I really, really, really needed you.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay.
You can't say no to that. I mean,
I don't know. I guess you could, but
you just start kissing him on the cheek and down the neck,
work.
and
that'll work.
Yeah,
he
might do it quickly.
He'll get in here in a minute if I start doing that. Hey, honey, kisses are in here. Well,
he'll come around.
He'll head this way.
That's right.
Well, listen, we talked about communication as one of the things you need in relationships. Well, you have a relationship with your mortgage broker. You should. I mean, I thought my communication level probably got irritating, but Taryn Newell of Birmingham Mortgage Group is just so patient, even with me going, what is this? What am I supposed, he's just so kind and good and smart. And he's going to get you in that house of your dreams. He's going to make it happen.
Yeah, he makes things happen that you didn't think could. So if you're thinking that maybe the new year is the time for you and your family, maybe you're growing, maybe you got a baby on the way, and you're like, we're in this little bitty tiny 500 square feet, it ain't going to work. But here's the cool part. Even if your credit's not the greatest, or you just feel like you can't put anything down, he's got great programs that he can help you with. So in Alabama and Florida, he would love to talk with you ahead of time before you go look. That way you know what kind of house you could really get into and afford it. So check him out, 205-259-1656, or just go to BehamMortgage.com.
Lots of positive things to say, according to research, about people who keep their phones on silent. They're considered selfish, or they don't care if I really need them. Their phone's on silent. Why are they doing that? Well, research shows they love their relationships. They're just very protective of their health. So they're at their very best, so they can give you the attention that you also deserve.
Yeah.
Having that ring at midnight is not going to benefit anybody, really.
Sure. Well, and I was actually having this conversation with my godson at Thanksgiving, because he's one of those where he will apologize to me face to face for not returning my text messages as quickly as I might want. But I told him, I said, buddy, you are setting a boundary and setting a precedent that unless it's an emergency, that that whatever we're talking about or I'm asking you or vice versa can wait until a time that we can talk, right? So I actually was kind of challenged by that in myself of that, who do I quickly respond to? Like, I mean, if it's my wife or my kids, I'm probably going to quickly respond. Anyone else, I'm going to at least finish the task, or if I'm, in the middle of a movie or dinner or whatever, like it can wait. And that's what I will say I love about having my iWatch is that I can look down, see who it's from, and if it's someone that I know needs my attention, then I will stop. Or if, like if my mom calls me, I'm probably going to stop what I'm doing and answering if I can, simply because it could be an emergency, as they get older, sometimes that kind of stuff, or just my own gut of, oh gosh, why is she calling? It's like, I need to know. So my anticipation, sometimes I have to kind of nix that because it could end up being nothing other than, hey, we just want to see if you want to get together this weekend. And I'll go, yeah, let me call you back. Let me look at my schedule. I'll call you back. That kind of a thing. But we have to set boundaries because otherwise it's right in our hand at all times. Typically the reason we respond so quickly is because we're already holding it.
Something I know you're familiar with, I am too, especially right here around the holidays. Things exploding, dying, not working at really inconvenient times when it's financially just devastating.
Yeah.
And the experts say there are many ways that you can deal with this creatively. Number one, it's don't panic. And that sounds silly, but it's not a person who's dying. Yeah. It's money. Money can be utilized creatively. You can mix things up. There are creative things you can do. And you need to ask yourself, did the thing that just explode, does it really need to be repaired? Things like a hot water heater. Yeah. We kind of had to have it. You had a stove issue?
We did, but we put it off. Like, I think we went almost the entire, like it stopped working probably February. And now the stovetop still worked, but the oven itself wouldn't hold, like you set it at 400 and it would go down to 280 or less. And before you know it, you're like, why is my pizza not done? And it's been 40 minutes. But the cool part is we learned to kind of work around it, especially with the fact that we're on the go so much. The kids are constantly microwave or air fryer, or pop and go. Like it was, what's something I can just grab out of the cabinet and eat it right now? Which astounds me. My son will eat raw ramen, and I'm like, Ryan, what? And he's like, no, I like it. It's because the flavoring is already on there, and he likes the crunchy. I'm like, hey, bro, you do you. But yeah, I will say, if it's not like hey, we need hot water for showers, let's get this happening. I think, if anything, the Dave Ramsey in me is always like, let's plan ahead so that when Murphy tries to move into the spare bedroom, we can take care of the things that are a priority, but anything else we can just wait or maybe learn to live without. Like that was a part of me that's like, if we're just using microwave and air fryer and stovetop anyway, can we just use the working stovetop and, use the oven for storage?
See, it's creative. Wayne fixed the dishwasher by watching YouTube. He fixed the garage door by watching YouTube. This is not a guy that thinks he's handy at all, but there are ways you can go about it. And the other big tip I have is friends. Yes. Who do you know that does this economically? And every time it's turned out great.
That's how we got our stove hooked up, because we found out that it was hardwired versus just a plug. So when the installers came from the store, they're like, yeah, this is out of our educational realm. You got to have an electrician. So I had a buddy from church, and he's like, I'll come over tomorrow. It's like, I love you so much right now.
Well, when you get stressed about things, you think, well, do I recommend coffee when I'm stressed? Coffee gets you hyped up, but there is something relaxing about the aroma of the Roxanne blend of coffee. It just smells like happiness to me. It is a relaxing smell. It's got pecan and a little bit of butterscotch. It's unusual, but not odd unusual, just yummy unusual. Yeah. You will love it. The people that try it just really have to have more. And so they put it on like auto deliver, which is really cool. It's still time. You can get it delivered as a Christmas gift to someone you love. They've got beautiful mugs. It's a wonderful company proclaiming the gospel of Jesus all around the world. MyBrothersCup.com, the Roxanne blend.
Easy to do. And of course, RoxanneandAce.com, another way that you can find it as well.
The emotional life of Jesus. This is fascinating stuff. A pastor was so interested in Jesus emotionally that he went to the Gospel of Mark, studied it. Scholars consider it to be the earliest written, about 40 years after Jesus' death, and it includes elements of both metaphor and remembered history. What does it say? This is so good about Jesus. You know, he says when he used to think about Jesus, it was about just a very patient, kind of chilled Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, didn't get real worked up about anything because after all, he's Jesus.
Yeah.
But if you look into it, he frequently withdrawed into nature. He went in the mountains. He went by the water. So he was chill there. But then we see Jesus with something almost like irritation. Jesus spoke sternly on several occasions with folks, kind of a little indignant, you know, looking at the skeptics. And then we all know about taking the whip into the temple and turning over tables.
Sure.
You know, we see him not tolerating some things that others were tolerating that were quite sinful. And so, you know, one of my favorite scriptures is Jesus wept.
Yeah. Well, and
because he felt things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope this year, wherever you are in your faith, that you will look at Jesus, or even God too, for that matter, and see him in the compassionate, gracious side, or maybe see him in a light that you've never saw him before. Like, what is it? What are the passages that you haven't gotten into, or the ones that didn't necessarily make sense? You know, there's, you know, between online studies and, you know, YouVersion Bible app, like there are so many ways for you to break open and break down the scriptures to truly understand them. But I love when God reveals himself in a way that I didn't see before. And that even after, you know, 40 plus years of faith, that has never stopped. Like, he never ceases to amaze me in how big he can be, or how quickly he can respond, or even in the grace that I'm like, well, this just blew up in my face, you know, and then he's like, hold on. And you're like, why did I doubt? You know, it's like, stop that.
Yeah. Why did I doubt? Really good question. Well, one thing you may have doubts about is the need for the penny. We still have pennies. Yeah. Almost no one uses them ever. They collect in drawers. We've got a big jar-like thing that is full of pennies.
Same.
Why do we have them? Well, keeping them, people are keeping 45 million pennies a year. And they don't want them all back because they say even if they got back a portion of them, it would overwhelm the system. Why do we need pennies?
So what are we supposed to do with them?
They're saying somebody needs to outlaw making more. But then the question is, who can do that? If they're looking into who, the president can't do it. Even the director of the mint can't say, well, we don't need pennies. And so it's a mystery, really.
I need to be better about taking, when my glass bucket jar thing that I just throw my change in, because I hate having change in my pocket, right? It's a Georgia Strait song, satellite song. Anyway, but it just accumulates. And like, you know, when the kids were little and they needed, you know, ice cream money or whatever, it was great. But I really should take it to those little things at, you know, the store that can like tally it up. And then it's like, it's $12.15. And you're like, hey, you know, and then it's like, you keep the 15 cents. I'm going to take the $12 to the record store.
Here is an important public service announcement. Do not get dead butt. Yes, it's dead butt syndrome. It's gluteal amnesia. It's actually a thing.
Wow.
When we're sitting on our heinies way too long, what happens? You literally get lockup. Like, your gluteus maximus is one of the strongest muscles in the body, a shock absorber. But if you just sit there and sit there, it can get numb.
Well, and that's why, again, iWatch did not endorse this show whatsoever, but another reason I love my watch is it will tell me, hey, it's been an hour since you stood up. Maybe you should take a quick walk. So I'm like, all right. So you walk down the hall, talk to a coworker, or, you know, maybe it's a bathroom break. But yeah, I don't, I think that's my thing I worry most, is like my body relaxing too much. Like, oh, because, when you go to get out of a chair, it's like, well, sound like my dad, it's like, but, sometimes, or how about this? You try to stay healthy and fit and cardio and all that, but then the next day when you do sit, it hurts to sit down because you work those muscles or it was leg day or whatever. And that I kind of laugh at Tawny because she's more of the extreme workout person than I am, but that's where I'm at when it comes to, like, I don't want to sit for too long because then I feel like I get stiff. But then if I did work out, I can't sit for too long because I do get stiff.
Well, what happens is your rear becomes so weak from inactivity, it forgets how to, I don't know why, it forgets how to function.
I don't want a weak rear,
Hey,
Can't even say that 3 times fast. Yeah.
Hey, rear end, let me I've got to get up. I've fallen. I'm sitting and I can't.
Get your gluteus maximus out of here.
Roxanne and Ace Unlimited, welcome to the show. So excited about tonight's guest, a legendary, and we don't use that word lightly, news director, news reporter, incredible radio personality, big history to last decades in a business that's full of sharks and craziness, really says a lot. But this guy's talent, I arrived in Birmingham in 1990, clueless, didn't know what I was going to do. And I would sit in a room and write next to this next gentleman. And I remember many times saying, I'll never be able to do what you do. He's so brilliant and so talented. And I tried to copy everything he did. Biggest compliment, right? You can give someone. And every time that I have listened to him on the radio, just as a listener, just laugh out loud funny. So much talent and a legacy of doing good for people. He was so kind to me and still is. And Ace, I know you had the experience many times of working with him as well. And when you work with somebody that, raises the bar, the game for you, it really says a lot. We welcome to the show, Jim Dent.
Well, thank you. This is the inaugural use of my new home studio.
All right.
And we had the part of the basement redone. And we now when I saw the bill, I said it's no longer the basement, it's the garden level.
Right.
I ended up with a small room where I can do things. And I've got, stuff.
Yeah.
And so can do voiceovers and fill in if I need to.
That's awesome. So, Jim, I wanted to ask, as someone who has watched you and listened to you do news for years, your headspace and heart space based on how news is covered today?
Poorly. I mean, when the fairness doctrine came in and you no longer had to give the other side a chance to respond to anything, broadcasting polarized. And a lot of it went right, a lot of it went left. Unfortunately, that has seeped into the news coverage. When it was just the talk show guy, it was fine. Nobody took him seriously anyway. But when you describe someone as a news anchor, or you have a reporter in the field, and they start their report with, I think, we're in trouble. I started a report one day when I was working at public radio, and my news director, a guy named Lewis White, who was also a legend. And Lewis helped me more than anybody else learn how to interview people. But I was out in the field reporting one day, went on live, and whoever was on the board that day said, well, can you describe what's going on? And I started out saying, I think, and continued with the report. And I got back to the studio and Lewis is there. He said, you are 23 years old. You have a degree in history. Nobody cares what you think. Now, I cleaned that up a little bit, but I don't care what the reporter thinks. I want to know what you know. And I don't think we're hearing a whole lot about what anybody knows these days.
No, and Jim, we used to have 2 sources What legitimate sources, not my grandmother told me or my dog next door barked, and it just drives me crazy.
One interview technique you'll hear, and I hear it all the time, is some say, you make your point and you set it up, and you're just looking for a reaction from whoever it is. And if they're smart, they'll say who. Yeah. But nobody does that. They go ahead and take the bait and answer whatever leading question you want to give them. I grew up with Walter Cronkite, Chet Huntley, David Brinkley, John Chancellor, Jules Verne doing the space reports. And those guys dealt in facts. Walter Cronkite famously, in covering the assassination of President Kennedy, lost it on the air when they couldn't. Have we confirmed that? Do you know that? And nobody could say yes or no. And he'd shut it down. He'd move off to something else. I want to say it was Howard K. Smith at ABC when President Reagan was shot, just shouted at whoever was in the studio saying, get it right. Don't bring it to me unless it's right. And they do that on the air. I'd like to see more of that. But, they don't do it now.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing's more frustrating than the fact that they use Twitter as a source or social media reports. Like social media reports, like social media is not a person. Like that's not a source that I trust.
And in my last go round with broadcast news at a radio station, I know that Roxanne worked there at one point. But, it was after I went into the tech business for about 20 years, ended up at AT&T. And when I left there, a week later, somebody called and said, you want to do news again? I said, no. But we got together and we worked something out. And, part of it was enabling me to do it here or in North Carolina, where we're spending a lot of time now. But I used Twitter, but only to catch the official feed from, say, the Birmingham Police Department or Hoover or something, where you have an officer standing there or a lieutenant or captain or whatever saying something. Yes, we used that, and we used it with their permission. And it was a very effective way of extending your reach for your newscast and having some actual sound without having to put a reporter in the field because they weren't going to pay for it. Mm-hmm. So we had to find a way to do it. And that was one way.
Tim, you've met a lot of fascinating people around your career surrounding what you've been able to do and had some very interesting assignments. Any stories you would care to share?
The most famous person I ever met was before I went into broadcasting, and that was Frank Sinatra. And it was here in Birmingham. Wow. It was just a chance. Yeah, I was working for a hotel. He was in the hotel. He came to the desk. He said, I'll give you $100 for an aspirin.
Wow.
No need. I'll take care of it. And he hung around for a minute, talked, where he was, that kind of thing. Just a regular guy. And I thought that was pretty cool. I ran across people early on when I started doing radio. Was working for WBHM here in town. And went to Washington and got to hang out with people at NPR for a while. And one of their evening anchors, Susan Stanberg, came to Birmingham later and for a fundraiser. And I was assigned to drive her from the hotel to dinner. And at the time, I had a little 2-seat convertible, a little Fiat. And I pulled up to the hotel, and she said, why don't you have the top down? It's such a lovely evening. So I put the top down, and we drove straight to Fifth Avenue North to the restaurant and got there. And the general manager of the station, who was a very, very prim and proper lady, freaked out when I pulled up with the top down and the co-anchor of all things in the front seat. And she pulled me aside. I can't believe you did that. I said, she asked for it. So, yeah, there were some fun times, even then. we had a good time.
So, Jim, talk a little bit about, as you've seen the world go to hell in a handbasket, from behind the news desk or behind the mic, how much of your faith allowed you to navigate what to say or how to deliver the news to the masses?
Well, I think I had a responsibility, not just as a journalist, and journalists do have responsibilities, whether they see them or not. But as a Christian, you can't mislead people. As a journalist, you're not supposed to hype something. Mm-hmm. I would correct people who were reporting for me if they would go off. If they went, it was a dreadful afternoon in downtown Birmingham. It may be dreadful to a couple of people, but is it affecting you that way? No. To over dramatize it, I know is something that the consultants want you to do these days. But this last go around, my deal with them was, I'm going to write it, I'm going to report it, and I really don't need a lot of input. And they left me alone. But that is an unusual situation these days. That was one reason I stayed in radio and didn't go to television. Television is too collaborative. There's too many people involved in what you're doing. Sure. And with radio, it's pretty much you and a microphone. And I like it.
Oh, I do too. Preferred it to TV, definitely.
I really enjoyed the write-offs that we had in the morning.
Right?
Yeah, me too.
That was fun.
Definitely.
Because you made me up my game, and I hope yours upped a little bit. So,
just tried to emulate you. I still do. I think you're just really awesome. How's your family, and how are you doing? How are you feeling?
Family's fine. Jeannie and I will celebrate our 17th wedding anniversary later this month.
Wow.
She had 3 children, and now they have produced a total of 6 grandchildren. There's a 7th on the way. Nice. 2 of the grandchildren, 2 little girls from Tennessee, are with us tonight. Aww. They've been here since Sunday. They will return to Chattanooga tomorrow.
Well,
that's
Jim,
awesome.
Roxanne and I love you, and we hold you in high regard. Thanks for your professionalism, but also your quirkiness and showing both sides of those over the years. But thanks for your time tonight, man. Well, of course, before we head out, we always like to check in on each other's vibes, especially now that Christmas is here. Roxanne, what's the trend for you this week?
You must drop what you're doing. Go to Bath and Body Works. Mm-hmm. They have a new scented candle called Frosted Forest.
All right.
I'm obsessed. This is God's smell of fresh snow in a forest. And it doesn't just, a little scent side of the room. Mm-hmm. Your whole room smells like a magical winter wonderland of freshness. Wow. I only have one right now, and I'm trying to use it sparingly because they're fond of their candles. Oh, my word, go.
All right. I didn't know you could capture Christmas in a candle, so that's very exciting. I'm digging that. My vibe for this week, and I'm totally dating myself, but for those of us that grew up on music, the softer side of the 70s and early 80s, it now is affectionately referred to as yacht rock. It's yacht rock radio. And it's been kind of coined. What started as a pun in a documentary on YouTube ended up becoming a format. So Sirius ended up adding it. Several other, I think iHeart even has their own version of it. And, and it was always labeled on my list as guilty pleasures, but now I can call it yacht rock and people know what I'm talking about. But Doobie Brothers, Michael McDonald, of course, is like the captain of the ship, but there's a documentary on that format or on that genre of music. because it never was out. It was never, they never were out to create a format. They were just doing music and they were collaborating. So you had Kenny Loggins working with Michael McDonald, and then they would work with Steely Dan, and then those musicians would go work on Michael Jackson's album, and and all of this, this tree kind of branched into all these divisions, but it tells that story. And what's cool is how it's not only had a rebirth with this yacht rock label, and there's like cover bands and whatnot, but new artists who grew up on that music like we did are either sampling it or inviting those artists to collaborate with them because they want that sound in their music. And it was just great. Like every song I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot that song. Oh, I got to add that song to my playlist. Like it's just, if you love that style of music or you grew up on that, it's on Max right now, and streaming just dropped. But just all the feels. I remember that style of music, especially like Eagles, Doobie Brothers, that stuff. Like I remember going to Kmart with my mom when I was like, 5 years old. And, all I wanted was popcorn and an icy. But all those songs on the radio, every time I hear them, and I'll hear it. And there have been times I've heard those songs and I'll weep because I'll remember a time with my mom, or maybe at some time I attached it to a relationship early on when my little budding heart was trying to date, but just I believe we grew up in the era that the best music ever
of real music. Toto, Foreigner. We went to a Foreigner show. My husband was shocked. I knew every last song, and then the rocking out, you got to do Def Leppard. Back in my day, it was AC/DC. I'm sorry. On a Christian program, I just said I listened to that.
Who's going back out on tour. So yeah.
What?
Yeah. They're coming to Nashville. Just laying that out there.
Oh, wow. But that in high school, that was our jam.
Sure, yeah.
And so, we will definitely have to check that out. We've gone to yacht rock concerts, and they're super fun to see. So that's awesome. I'll check it out.
It's good stuff. So thanks again for hanging out. Thanks to My Brother's Cup and Birmingham Mortgage Group for another great week of Unlimited. Also to the Wisdoms and all that is Jim Dent, and he is his own holiday package. But subscribe, like, and follow, especially as we get closer to the 100th episode. Big news coming for season 3, and we're excited for you to join alongside of it. But have a great rest of your weekend. Roxanne, I love you.
You've been listening to Roxanne and Ace Unlimited. To make sure you don't miss future shows, you can subscribe anywhere you like to podcast and catch up on anything you've missed. Find out more at RoxanneandAce.com. Roxanne and Ace Unlimited is a production of Spacebird Media.